Recently, I've seen that in Spain, churches have become skate parks. In Belgium, some have become hotels, and in Germany, kindergartens. In South River, Ohio, a winery. I think it's disrespectful. I think a sacred space should always be respected and used for worship. So joining me, I have Michael Phillips from the Christian Legal Centre, and of course my dualists, Emma Webb and Peter Edwards. Michael, thank you for joining us from the Christian Legal Centre. It seems to be an increasing situation that churches are being flogged off and becoming anything from shops to mosques to apartment buildings to all the things I've just listed.
That's right. I think it's a sad sign. You see it quite prevalent in certain parts of the country. I recently came back from holiday in Cornwall, and I saw it there. I saw it in South Wales as well. It's pretty prevalent there. And, you know, these are these fantastic buildings which were created very often in the middle of a revival, a Wesleyan revival or George Whitefield, and people had a desire to meet together. And even though maybe they lived in pretty small houses, they created these magnificent places where they got together and worshiped God. And now we're left in this situation where we have an increasing number of church buildings, magnificent buildings, and what do you do with them? And, you know, one has maybe some sympathy that the church still wants to make use of them. But I think what I would say is this, is that very often what we see is the problem is church decline. And why is the church declining? The church is declining because it is moving in a certain direction and it is going with the tide. And the church has always been countercultural. And what some recent studies have shown, academic studies have shown, is that the churches which are not progressive are the ones who are not falling in attendance rates. So those ones who, for example, have not endorsed, for example, same-sex marriage are actually growing. And they're the ones that are looking for new buildings. And we would say, look, you know, there is a problem, but introducing a skate park or a crazy golf course into the middle of the sacred space is not the way to deal with it.
So I'm going to bring my dualist into this. Peter Edwards, there's a case here of use them or lose them, but also go woke, go broke.
I wouldn't put it that way, and I think we're mixing up a few things here. So first of all, when we're talking about deconsecrated churches, so that's turned into a block of flats or a mosque, that's not a church anymore, that's an ex-church.
That's the point, though.
Yeah, and the vicar's come in and said this is no longer church. But then the other issue you raised, and by the way, I thought your intro at 7 o'clock was very harsh on the Church of England, but the idea that a functioning church carries other activities, I think is really good. But the judgment about which activities you go for has got to be exercised really carefully. So food bank, absolute no-brainer, completely right and appropriate. And I'm a churchgoer, and I would be delighted to see a food bank in a church. I think nursery, well, I'm a parent. You know, you've got some folks in London paying more than £2,000 per month per child. Imagine if you're a single parent with 2 kids. So having a nursery in a church, I can see the case for that. I think once you get into the realms of something that's pure entertainment, though, where there isn't really a social good like a skate park, yeah, I'm a lot more chary of something like that, because churches should be in the community, and I think churches should be warriors for social justice, which is kind of what you were arguing against at the start. But there's a wholesale difference between food bank and nursery and, you know, a skate park where we're all running around in green trousers for no kind of superior purpose.
My point is the church is about social justice, but shouldn't become social justice warriors taking on board neo-Marxism, which is essentially communism.
I don't mean to interrupt, I want to let him speak, but
you do mean to interrupt. Go on, that's fine, though.
OK, I do mean to interrupt, and I apologise for doing so. Why do you keep associating it with Marxism?
Because that's exactly what it is. If you look at the roots of critical race theory, queer theory, gender theory, all of these theories come from one ideology, which is neo-Marxism, which is essentially from the Frankfurt School of Thought. And all of this can be tracked online, or if you want to read the source material, it is essentially communism.
But Archbishop Justin, the head of the Church of England, is not a Marxist.
But he's taking on board Marxist ideology. That's the problem. When you want to solve a problem in the church, you refer to the Bible. You pick up the good book, which tells you how to do social justice. What you don't do is go to the latest academic trend and say, OK, so what do we do? Oh, critical race theory.
That's not the reason for opening a food bank, though, is it? It's nothing to do with Marxism.
I didn't say it was. You're conflating many causes, which you accused me of earlier. You're now conflating causes. But I do want to bring Emma into this, because, Emma, there's a church quite near me. They call it the Sheriff Centre instead of calling it church. It used to be St James's, West Hampstead. Now it's the Sheriff Centre that's got soft play. It's got a licensed bar, it's got a post office, all very useful things, but within the church itself.
Firstly, before coming to your point, I just want to say that if you just look on the Church of England's website, anybody can see it for themselves, that the documents that are being put out by the Church of England are absolutely steeped in critical theory-informed ideas. That ideology has a distinct intellectual history. It is very much present in the Church of England today. Someone could dispute that, but the evidence is clear as day. I find, going back to your question, Calvin, I find this really very upsetting. I've seen for myself churches in the UK turned into skate parks, helter-skelters, putt-putt courses. This has been going on, this trajectory, for quite a long time, and it's this instinct to try and turn the churches into secular spaces because the Church of England seems to think that that's going to get bums on pews. But what they're doing in the process is a kind of they're opting into their own dissolution. And so I think that it's one thing when a church gets sold off and turned into flats or a supermarket. I've seen it very often. But I think it's the fact that the Church of England clergy, even in the churches that continue to be functional churches, don't seem to have a sense of sacred space anymore. There's no sense of proper respect and decorum with respect to the holiness of that church. It doesn't matter whether or not a vicar has said this is no longer a church anymore. When I see a church that has been turned into something that is no longer church, I find it upsetting. And I think many people find, for example, one church I read about today being turned into a fetish club. It's offensive.
That's disgusting. And you're right, it doesn't affect bums on pews. In fact, it has the opposite effect, as Michael Phillips alluded to earlier. Thank you very much, Michael Phillips and my dualist, for that conversation. Emma Webb and Peter Edwards for your time this evening on the panel.